everybody, and thank you for joining us again today. You're used to seeing Jamie here, and my name is Angie, and we're welcoming today Heather Harrison. Heather and I work together in the Fitness and Health Promotion Program, where Heather is a full-time faculty member, and I know she has a real passion for our topic today, which is motivation, and I know what I should be doing, but I can't get myself quite there to do it, and why is that? Why does that happen? So I know, Heather, if maybe we can back up and talk about some of your background that makes you a bit of an, I think I would consider you a bit of an expert in this field. Like, I know it's a real passion of yours as well.
Yes. Yeah, I'm definitely passionate about it. And I have been engaging in lots of learning, the last 15 years at least. So yeah, I would call it a passion for sure. I'm a certified fitness coach. I also am a certified coach in behavior change, in a model of behavior change. So currently, I'm a full-time faculty member in health and fitness promotion and in massage, and the courses that I teach generally talk about the psychology of behavior and how we get people to engage in health behaviors, or better said, how we support people to get involved in health behaviors, because we can't get them to do anything. That's the great thing about people.
I know, I often remember when we talk about this topic in general, there was a researcher at the university who was working on her PhD, and she was working with clinically depressed patients from Lake Ridge Health and getting them into the Flex to work out. And she said, it's just, if we have a hard time getting there to the gym, imagine how challenging it is for people who are clinically depressed. Like, we're getting out of bed is a challenge. She said, I wish if we only had a pill that could just get people there, then we would be all away to the races.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting because we make a distinction between these populations of people. So if we're talking about a clinically depressed population or a gen population or whatever, but really in some ways it all comes down to activation energy. So this is a term that kind of has been flown about in behavior change. And I don't know, Jamie, if you've heard this specific term, but it's all about it's sort of the concept of inertia almost, right? An object in motion tends to stay in motion. So that's the idea. It's like, how do we get people there? And there are ways to play with activation energy a little bit. And one way can be your emotional or physiological state. So people who are in a more positive emotional or physiological state tend to have easier times with activation energy. So there's something very interesting there that we can learn from studies like that will support people across populations. So I'll give you a very easy example. When I don't want to go to the gym, I'll be like, oh, this is the worst. It's snowing outside. It is snowing outside right now. It's actually quite beautiful. And I don't want to go out to the gym if it were open. But if I throw on my favorite Spotify list of songs and I'm rocking out to my 80s my 80s dance jams from my group fitness classes in the past, I feel better. I just feel more like I can get up and dance, and I feel like I have the activation inside of me, the energy to actually move to the next step. So just playing with emotional or physiological activation is we can see a movement. And in some ways, that's true in clinical populations too. And not that we want to digress there too, or maybe we do, I don't know. But there is a loop, right? Like, if I feel better, I do better. If I do better, I feel better. And then it can just sort of escalate.
So why is it then, Heather, that we tend to do a lot of us tend to do the opposite, where I don't have the energy, so I'm not going to work out, so I don't feel great. Oh, that's why I'm not working out, because I still don't have the energy. Like, why do we loop back to that? Like, a lot of us revert to that more than we revert to, I know if I just get there, I can be fine.
Yes, so many things. There's so many ways we can come at this. Yeah. There's this car in a model that I talk a lot about called choice theory or internal psychology, and it's called the total behavior car. And maybe we can get a picture of it up on here when we do post-production. But the ideal is it's a four-wheel car. It's a front-wheel drive car. Okay, so all four wheels are part of total behavior. And the front wheels are doing and thinking, and the back wheels are physiological adaptation and emotion. So the idea here is all four of those things are involved in behavior. For instance, if I'm running, which is a doing behavior, while I'm running, I'm doing some thinking while I'm running. Usually when I'm running outside, I'm thinking, I hate this. Why did I do this? Like, it's hard, whatever. When I'm running outside doing, and I'm thinking these thoughts, I have an emotional feeling about it. I'm like, I feel, like I feel agitated or uncomfortable or unhappy or mad or whatever. And then my body has a physiological adaptation to that. The adaptation to running is, elevated heart rate, sweat glands, all those things. But there's also a physiological adaptation to my thinking. So if I'm thinking unhappy thoughts, there it is, it's beautiful. If I'm thinking unhappy thoughts, that can change my physical state. So I'm gonna move away from running, and I'm gonna talk about the movies. Okay, so you go to the movies and you're perfectly fine. Your life is perfectly, happy. You're in a happy state, and you go to the movies and you watch a very emotional movie, and you start to think about the emotions of it. Well, your body feels down, right? So just like this picture states, it's a front wheel drive car. So back wheels are good information. They're good information, but they're not directors. What directs your behavior is you do something differently or you think something differently. It's kind of a simple way to kind of think about it. So we can get in that loop where we're stuck in the back wheels. We're like, oh, I don't feel good, and I don't feel good. I don't have the energy. Oh, I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. Oh, I wish I should be working out. And we kind of get stuck in that loop. And it just sort of perpetuates itself downward as opposed to the way that I said upward, right? So the wonderful thing about this knowledge, and this changed my life just looking at this, and this model looks differently or is explained differently in lots of different places. But what I loved about this is the only way to change the back wheels are to change the front wheels. The only way to change the back wheels are to change the front wheels. You can change the back wheels, but it's not direct. You have to do it through a front wheel action or thought. And so how do we penetrate that? Just having that knowledge to me is power.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Oftentimes I talk to students about finding their why and finding what the value, meaning, and purpose is behind. And again, lots of tangents we could go on, but even things well, I should be doing this, but I don't want to. Like those shoulds, right? Those expectations that we give ourselves, that other people give us from family and society and all those things. But often I will say, or have discussions around, why? What is it that's making you want to do this? And so, and then kind of with the idea that the value of that is kind of understanding what the motivation is. And then when sometimes you can kind of reconnect to that motivation, to those values, to that why, it can kind of help, I guess, using this example, propel you forward. So would that kind of fall under the thinking piece, part of this total behavior car, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So many things in what you said, Jamie. Oh, so good. So first of all, when people say I should that, I say to them, stop shitting on yourself. Don't shit on yourself. You should, whatever. What do you want? And you can see that in the middle of this diagram, actually. And then what I say is, what do you really, really want? Right? Let's have a Spice Girls moment, because that is finding your deeper why. Now, if you follow Simon Sinek, he's all over social media. He has a book called Start From Why. And the idea there is you want to get into the limbic part of the brain, which is the emotion center, because if we tap into emotions, we're going to get more activation. We're going to get more drive. Okay. Now, here's the thing about fitness that I love. I love this about fitness. This is true in my own life. This is true in so many of the lives of the people that I have been able to coach or be around, is that we sometimes use the behavior of fitness to get what might seem like unrelated whys. So if I'm having a deep conversation with a client and I say, or even myself, let's use myself, and I say, why do you work out, Heather? What is it that you're working out for? If I went deep into the why, multiple layers of why, I would see a picture of me harmoniously hanging out with my children. I have a lot of children, right? And it's chaos sometimes, and not being snarky and grumpy with them. And we're playing something that they find need fulfilling. Maybe in my dream state, in my deeper why, it's us all on a family biking trip. And everyone's able to do it, and we're having fun. It's not just about the fitness. So why do I get on the treadmill, or why do I get on the bike for those arduous 20, 30 minute, 40 minute sessions? It's because I want to hang out with my kids and not be a big jerk and grumpy all the time. Okay. So then I can go back and be like, okay, if my deeper why is to have harmonious connections with my kids, my family, my partner, and my kids, then working out is not the only way to do that. Okay. I use it because it helps regulate some of my emotions and my hormones, and it helps me get fit, and I feel better in my body, and I look better, and I can socialize, and I can get out of my house, and I don't have to like hide away in my house because I hate myself or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? And I say that kind of glibly, but at the same time, I think there is a lot of this kind of going on in people's deeper psyches or whatever. So part of that is just understanding, okay, why am I doing all of this? And stop being so hard on yourself for not getting on the bike. Maybe you can go direct to source. Just go connect with your kids right now. And then I make a deposit in the bank of self-love because I'm like, oh, that's a behavior I can be doing to achieve the same deeper why. And then when I connect in that way, I move some space inside of myself that is not shitting on myself anymore. I'm just like, okay, there's almost like a decompression. Like I'm just like, okay, I'm connecting, this feels good. And that opens up the space to do the behavior of working out potentially, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something really interesting there. And sometimes we can ask ourselves questions rather than searching for answers. Like, well, why? Like, what's motivating? Like, what is underneath this? Kind of like peeling layers of an onion, if you will. Yeah. And it's like using your own self-insight or exploring your own self-insight by asking questions can lead you to that why.
And sometimes it's not, Manicotti, I've said this so many times, like, it's so fascinating to me. We live in a culture that is designed for us to disconnect from our own whys, because we live in a state where other people know what's best for us. I'm doing this right now with my kids. I'm teaching them from very little that I know what's best for them over what they know what's best for them, right? And so we grow up just believing that everybody else has the answers. So we we rarely or less often take an opportunity to say, okay, like, what is that I really want here? What is it that I really want? And the more we can sort of connect to that, and it might take a long time. It's not like you're going to sit down in one deep session and have all the answers potentially. It's just like, okay, wait, do I really want this? And I guess in some places they call it embodiment. It's just having a better connection to like what's in your brain and how that plays itself out in your own body. So yeah, it's fascinating. And this is not like, this took me 15 years and I'm still evolving. Like, wait, what do I want? Do I really want that? And why am I trying to get myself down to X number of body fat? Like, what is that about? Right? And then I have these moments, especially during this time when there's a lot of change automatically. Like, we had to adapt our lives. We didn't have any control over it. There's lots of adaptations that are taking place in COVID. It's in this time with so much going on, I can see myself striving, like trying to go back to old patterns. Like, I can't connect with my friends. Like, nobody's available. And I get this sort of anxiety inside of me that my connection needs aren't being met. And then I go straight to something that I can control, which is fitness. Okay, then I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to be the fittest I can be. And it has nothing to do with that necessarily. It has to do with the fact that I'm feeling disconnected and I have no control, and there's all of this chaos, it's not chaos, but change happening. And so to just be really mindful of that instead of shitting on myself, just be like, you know what, go for a run because you're going to feel better right now. Try to connect again later. I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah, it does. And if I can jump back, if you don't mind, to Heather or Jamie, when you were talking about, so it's important to know your whys. And I think that's one of the things that talking about COVID too, that I've come to kind of I always knew what my values were, but I think they've been heightened at this time. So they've been they've shone even brighter. Yeah. But if somebody doesn't know their why, like, what's the best way to go about figuring? So I know, like you said, I'm not going to sit down and say, why do I want this? Like, what's the starting point for somebody to figure out what their why is?
Yeah. Jamie, do you want to jump in, or
we can both take a stab at it? But yeah, I mean, I'll start. I mean, the easiest thing is kind of, for me, and even in my training as a coach, it's asking questions. It's shifting the mindset of like trying to always search for answers to then just searching for the right questions rather than the right answers. Because a lot of times I find having those right things to explore, or certain things to try to just ask questions about, those can really open up different perspectives, different possibilities, rather than someone or like even going to Google or having conversations, which can be very valuable, mind you, and people giving, advice and recommendations, but that doesn't always resonate. And so I think that when we can kind of like go into ourselves and kind of do that self-exploration, that's when, but you can find really like valuable, deep, profound understanding in terms of what you want, who you are, why you do, what you want to be, who you want to be, all those kinds of things. So for me, and as a coach, like in terms of like my wellness life coaching thing, I try to ask a lot of questions instead of giving a lot of suggestions and advice. And so kind of just keeping in line with that mantra, that approach, if you will.
Yeah. So much we say. It's said. The funny thing is I have this automatic resistance because I'm like, well, how do people find their whys? And I'm like, whoa, I'm not saying you should find your why, because that's what it seems like. It's like another part. Oh, now I have to find my why. Oh, God. Like, oh, geez, how do I find my perfect why? I think it's, if we go back to that car, your body will tell you what your why is. Your body is a source of information. It's fascinating. You're paying attention to the back wheels. So when you feel joy, when you feel a sense of something in your body that says, yes, this is it. Like when I'm really excited about something, and it doesn't happen very often, my gums get tingly. Like, I don't know what that is, but I'll be like, oh, there's my gums. Okay. This must be something in this is really exciting for me. Right? So it's the back wheels. It's your body giving you information about what's important to you or what's not working for you. That's important to pay attention to. And it's interesting because I have a lot of conversations with my students about anxiety and this feeling of anxiety. And I'm like, anxiety is good information. It says that something is not working for you. Something's not working for you. So I would say as a first step, just pay attention to what information your body's giving you. And then, as Jamie said, just ask a couple questions. It's like, oh, that's a feeling of joy. Okay, well, what is it about this that I'm really loving? Take note. Or, ooh, that's a sense of, not good for like frustration, right? What is it that I don't like about this? And then you can slowly kind of do it that way.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's awesome.
I think it's important to know too, Heather, like what you brought up, this isn't like necessarily finding your why either. And like that is totally an evolving thing, because you might find your why one day and then life goes on, you change, life changes, and then you have a new why, right? Yes. It's never static. It's just kind of in flux, it's fluid. And, Angie, or Heather, we had a podcast a month or so ago on mind-body connections, and in terms of like, those associations. And so a lot of like, what is kind of coming up today is reminding me of, things like how thoughts, how feelings can manifest in a body. So listening to like, what is my body telling me about this right now? It's totally so important to be aware of something to pay attention to.
Yes. And that helps me to think about the stress bucket. So you probably know that it's a great analogy, and I tell all my students about it and everybody that will listen because it's such a great analogy. But sometimes we use fitness to help dissipate some of those feelings that come out from all of this. Maybe that's not the cleanest connection to what you're saying, but different emotions can manifest themselves as physical pain or whatever sources. I watched that webinar, actually. My partner was on it. But anyways, more on that later. But so sometimes we use fitness to regulate that, and we don't realize it. So it's something's happening in our mind or emotionally. It's usually in our mind, right? It starts psychologically, manifests in our body, and then we use fitness to regulate our body, and then we don't kind of do the work where we go back into the mind to figure out, okay, where did that come from? So we're constantly in this state of just like a Band-Aid effect, if you will, right? Like fitness is so powerful for that. It's so powerful for helping just keep us functioning on a daily basis. And so many people use it for that, including myself. And that's not wrong. That's okay. But if we want to get beyond that, then there's probably some more stuff we could do, some more work, or to have an awareness at least. That's totally fine. Like on days I'll be like, I'm going to have this totally crappy day and I'm not changing anything about my life. I'm just going to do 20 minutes on the bike and all is going to be well for those next 4 hours. And then it'll probably come back, and that's fine. I mean, that's fine. That's your prerogative. Anyways, I guess my point is that whole mind-body connection thing. And where fitness falls into that, oh, and this is the part I want to make sure I say this, is if you don't work out that day, you might have found another way to meet that need. And to make that connection is really important, because then you don't poop on yourself and create that downward spiral. Do you know what I mean? So how do you have and both instead of either or? Like, can we get out of that all or nothing thinking? And both. Kim Over, she's great. She does lots of stuff about that. And both. How do you have your relationships and do some physical activity instead of like, I didn't do my 5 sessions of cardio this week. Oh no, right? How do you do both of those things?
Mm-hmm.
And I think going back to kind of something you mentioned earlier and tying into this too, Heather, I think when you're saying about, listening to your body, I think we've been trained, as you said, kind of almost not to do that. And even we're using the term fitness, and we could interchange that with physical activity, because we often say, you might never step foot in a gym and be one of the healthiest people on the planet. Yeah. Making sure if you're watching this, we're not just saying this is all about fitness. We're just using fitness as an example often, but physical activity in general. But then often, as you're saying, I think we do things because, okay, this is on my list. Okay, 11 o'clock is time to go to the gym, where I go, but we don't ever then process, oh my gosh, I feel so much better now than I did an hour ago before I started this workout. And I like that idea about kind of reconnecting. So just because you've done it, what does it mean afterwards? And what feelings are you feeling? And physiologically, what are some of the things that you've noticed, just so we have a bit more awareness of ourselves. We've goodness knows we know about everybody else through social media and everything, but do we know as much as we could about ourselves is the question.
Yes, this is a theme that I talk about when I'm coaching coaches or teaching the future fitness and health professionals, is that we don't know. Like, we know how to prescribe exercise. We're good at that. That's what our niche is, but we don't know how people fit it into their lives. They know the best about their lives. So the more that we can encourage clients, patients, friends to have their own decisions, stop telling people what to do, because it's helping people, including ourselves, reconnect our bodies. And what I'll say, sort of as an extension of that, is it's fascinating to me how many people, even who are physically active, who I'll say, okay, so you're feeling some pain. Where are you feeling the pain? I don't know, somewhere. It's so hard for us to connect to, oh, okay, I can actually feel it coming from here. To, again, it's that disembodiment. Like, we do it a lot just in our culture in general, oh, I need to take some fat off of this finger. Do you know what I mean? It's like this finger exists on its own, not with the rest of our body. Do you know what I mean? We do that constantly. We're dissecting things, sort of the way our brain works. Like, if we can get that more holistic approach in whatever way that can manifest itself in our lives, I think that would be a good foundation for moving forward.
No, that's great. And one of the reasons that we were talking about this, like, kind of thinking this podcast would be ready in time for people who are thinking about making their New Year's resolutions. So if you were, first of all, tell me about New Year's resolutions. Do you make them? Do you believe people should they avoid that because there's another trap that they're going to fall into and not be successful in? What are your thoughts on New Year's resolutions?
I don't make them. I think because I've always, don't, whatever, again, is that activation energy. For me, I see that all or nothing. So if I make any kind of resolution, I'm going to start Monday, and then Monday comes and Monday's a flub. Oh, I guess I have to start next Monday, right? Like, so there's a whole, automatically you're like, I'll just take the week out because I have this Monday thing in my head. So I don't for that reason, but I'm like, nope, cut the BS. Like, I have this thing in my life, and with some of my colleagues, we call off-ramps. It's like, there are barriers in life. Those are true things that get in the way of you moving forward on whatever it is you want out of life, the behaviors that you want to get you there. And then there are these things called off-ramps. And the off-ramp is, you can call them excuses or whatever. They're things that you will tell yourself to let yourself off the hook from doing the behavior, right? And so I kind of think of New Year's resolutions as that. But again, this is me, does not have to be you. If New Year's resolutions work for you, do it. So that would be my take there. I would say, make a New Year's resolution, but be able to call BS on yourself if you don't follow through on it. and part of that is the pre-work. And I'm a big fan of, like, again, I say to my students, you'll make a program with your client, and then you'll say, great, now, what are your off-ramps? How are you going to get in the way? How are you going to get in the way of activating this plan? And then I'll say, and you can't say that to your client unless you share the way that you do it yourself, because we all do it. And you know, this is coaches too. So I'll give my example, and I hope we have time for this. I always bring up my friend Maddie Pfeiffer, who was a triathlete back in the day, as a swimmer now. I met him in university. And so he knew my off ramps. And one of my off ramps was, if I was going to go work out, I'd be like, oh, I'm hungry. It was always came down, I better just have a snack, because I don't want to be in the middle of my workout and be hungry. And that would decrease the efficiency of my whatever, insert garbage, right? So I would call him if I was like, oh, I think this is an off ramp, or I got to call BS on myself. I would call him as a joke, or he's my roommate for a while, and I'd be like, Maddie, I'm talking about eating before the gym. He's like, oh, you're full of that, you know, expletive, like, you're full of it. I just saw you eat a piece of bread and a banana half an hour ago. Like, get to the gym, right? And I'd be like, okay, right? So to be able to proactively make a list of the BS that we tell ourselves, and there are real reasons, like work, children, people get sick, doo-doo-doo. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, oh, I'm hungry and I ate 2 hours ago and I physically can't eat within an hour of the gym. So what? I have a half an hour to an hour window where I can actually go to the gym. Like, Heather, get over yourself. Like, get to the gym. What is this about? Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Sounds a lot. Yeah, that sounds to me like a lot of ways to create like accountability and structure accountability in your life. And because so often people, like you said, they, you know, they want to do things and then off ramp, you know, yeah.
Like I'll just watch one more episode of Netflix. It'll be fine. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not going to be fine.
Yeah. But yeah. Having that accountability piece, and if you have someone to, you know, like you said, Heather, you have a friend that you call upon, and like, hey, you know, kind of like, and he gives you that nudge to no, get up and do what you want to do. So yeah, it can be really, really helpful and important. I wonder though, when people have those off ramps and maybe don't have others they could call and maybe reach out to, what are some good solutions that people themselves could possibly try to, you know, stay on the highway instead of choosing an off ramp?
Yeah, exactly. Good for you. So there's a really important relationship in everybody's lives, and that's the relationship to yourself, right? And so I've used this idea before, and it's worked for me. That's why I always bring it up, is a note to self. And Angie, I think you've probably heard this, is after I do the behavior that I'm saying that I want to do to get me to the place I want to go, no matter what it is. This could be fitness, this could be anything, like whatever it is. After I do the behavior, especially if I do it at a time when I didn't want to do it, like it took me all my activation energy to get going and do it, then I make a note to myself right after I complete it, talking to my future self that doesn't want to do it about how good I feel now. I'm glad I got it done. So it's like, give a gift to your future self, right? So what I've done is actually video record myself back in the day, audio record back in the day before that, write a note, which says, Heather, you didn't want to do this. And the funny thing, you guys, it could be 10 years later and I'm reading that note and it's like I'm back there. Like I remember that moment. And it's like, you didn't want to do this. Remember, you're sitting on the couch and this happened or whatever, and you had all the excuses. You had a bad day. And so you get to feel better. And what feels better is a donut and wine together or whatever, instead of, you know, going to do your run outside or whatever it is. But you did it and you honestly felt better and you still ate the donut and you had Anvil. Good for you, right? And so I read that and I'm like, ooh, yes. And so it's like my own self telling me, you can have this. And I'll tell you, you know, in all honesty, does it work every single time? No. Sometimes I read it and I'm like, meh, chomp, chomp, you know, whatever. But for me, that's a powerful thing. So if you don't have other people in that moment, then you can have yourself in that moment, your past self telling your future self. Or sometimes probably one of the most, well, we sort of talked about this, is having a plan. It's written down, so it's there. And then you start to develop the habit. Like ideally, one of the most effective things is to make it an unconscious thinking thing. You're always thinking. I was going to say non-thinking, but make it a habit. And a habit is a neural pathway that is established that your brain goes, oh, that road's already paved. I'll just take that road. It's easier than doing this road that's not paved, right? So the more we can make it a habit, you don't have to rely so much on helping relationships, but I'll say more because there's so much. There's online communities. There's, you know, people you don't know as well, you know, so And they can just be accountability groups, or I don't know, or if you scroll through, if you're an Instagram person, like I have people on my Instagram I don't know, but I'll be like, doot, 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 doot. Oh, there's somebody I want to be in my age demographic who's like me, not some young person, not a 20-year-old young person who doesn't have 4 children and a partner and a job and like da-da-da. Like I'll go find people that are like me, whether I know them or not, and I just scroll through and I see them doing the things I want to do. And sometimes that creates the active energy. So depending on who you are, there's sort of lots of methods, I guess.
I think something you said resonated with me too, Heather, that if we're speaking about physical activity or fitness, I think one of the things that we need to kind of shift our brains to sometimes as well is that, again, it doesn't have to be going for a run, getting on a bike, going outside. What is it that you like to do? Because then it's not so much of, oh, I've got to get on my bike or I have to go outside for a run. It's what do you enjoy doing, and does it elevate your heart rate and elevate your respiration rate? And I'm getting a little bit sweaty right now. And I think it's that all or nothing thinking. If it's not the gym, it doesn't count as a workout.
Yes.
I think that's really important for people too. And I think this has come up a number of times across a bunch of different podcasts and webinars that we've done as well. So I think that there is a principle in fitness called the principle of individualization, where, again, if you hate the treadmill, I'm not going to, as a personal trainer, write you a program and say, Heather, 2 hours on the treadmill every week, otherwise you're never going to achieve those goals. Ridiculous, because we don't have adherence then. So doing things that you like to do will also help with that adherence piece that so many of us struggle with. And again, I'm sitting here in the flex, and we're not open yet, so it's empty. But if it were not in COVID times in January, we would be seeing upwards of 1,000 people in the flex a day. Then you hit February,
yes,
we're nowhere near that. So we see that in September, gym membership, this is awesome. I can be at the gym with other people who are like-minded. This is great. And then competing priorities. I have 2 exams today, and I have this paper due, and I want to go home for Thanksgiving, and then that breaks the routine, and away we go. So just, again, hopefully this podcast can kind of help lift some people up and come back to this conversation. If you're struggling, then come back to this podcast and come back to this conversation, and let those things that Heather and Jamie are saying really resonate with you, and kind of maybe that can also be your pep talk of, you know what Heather said about calling BS on myself, I get that, and I'm doing that right now. Okay, I'm putting my shoes on, away I go.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, so many good things, Angie. Like part of physical activity, part of motivation, part of fitness is ebbs and flows. Like nothing in life stays consistent. Nothing. Like find me one thing. I don't know. Like, wow. Even the air quality changes. Do you know what I mean? Air doesn't. Yes, it does. Like everything changes. So it's normal to have a dip in your output. Like whatever it is your program is, if we could plan proactively for that and be like, oh, this is when that's happening. Like I have great energy, I feel great, and then I have a week of workouts where I feel like garbage, and that can set you to a downward spiral if you don't realize it works like that. So then you say, okay, when are my exams? I mean, it might require a little bit of proactivity if you want to do it that way, or you'll just have an awareness when it comes. When are my exams? Oh, I didn't get to my workouts today. Well, I had 4 exams. Oh, that's normal. That's this dip. Okay, get back on the bandwagon. And that is a characteristic of high performers across the board, is they fall off, but they get back on right away, right? So no, that big deal. Again, done, gone. I can't do anything in the past. Great, let's moving forward. So that's normal and typical. And the other thing I was going to talk about was the tiny habits principle. So I don't know if you know BJ Fogg out of Stanford, and there's Atomic Habits. There's a book. Anyway, so all of these sort of concepts are pare it down into a tangible, manageable chunk for whatever's happening in your week. So can you get 5 workouts in for an hour? I was laughing when my students are like, I'll go 2 hours a day for 5 days a week. I'm like, okay, like, I don't know if that's sustainable, but good for you. So then, this week I'm going to do 10 minutes of yoga and drink 2 cups of water, which I've done a lot. That has been my program a lot intermittently. 10 minutes of yoga, because Tony Robbins said once, if you don't have 10 minutes, you don't have a life. And that stuck with me. I was like, holy smokes, I don't want to be a person who doesn't have a life. So do 10 minutes of yoga, Heather. Like, you know what I mean? And those days, that 10 minutes changes my trajectory, changes the way I feel about myself and my access to more fitness, I guess. So those ebbs and flows are normal. I think what happens is people do January and they start to see the decline, and they're like, here it is again. I'm failing. That's over. See you later, January. And January 2021 comes around. They're like, oh, hey, Do you know what I mean? It's normal, guys. That's normal. Everyone's like that. Even the highest level athletes have an off season. People who get paid to do athletics have an off season, and they drink too much, and they, you know, like sit around with their friends, but they come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very. So wise, Heather Harrison.
I don't know. I just like, you know what it is? And I would encourage people to do this, is what I love about coaching, and Jamie, you probably know that, Angie, everyone here would know this, is once you have enough conversations with people, you realize we're all the same. You realize that we all have the same things happening, the same ebbs and flows, right? Like, we're not special butterflies. Like, we are, but we're not. You know what I mean? Like, we all have insecurities about our body, and we all wish we were doing more, and and that's kind of been programmed from culture. So once we realize we're kind of all the same, you can just be like, oh, I guess I can get over than poo-pooing on myself and just figure out what I want. What do I want? What am I doing to get what I want? Do you know what I mean? Or better yet, what do I want? What do I have? And if those are out of balance, what can I do to get them back in balance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that might be fitness or physical activity or connecting with a friend or just dancing by myself with my headphones on or having a bath or whatever. So one thought I would say to my clients is, I'm like, do one healthy thing for your life every single day. And it's like micro, it'll just add up. So if you can do physical activity, great. If you can't eat some really good food, high quality food, if you can't have a bath, like just have some downtime. If you can't connect with a friend, if you can't, you know what I mean? Breathe. I said to my students, if you can't do any of that, just take one long breath.
Mm-hmm.
And that can just open up the tiniest little bit of space.
There is something, just having you do that, Heather, there is something about that letting go breath where you, and you know, we think, oh, breathing out, count to 3, whatever. But that actual audible letting go breath, like physiologically for me, I actually feel a difference when if I'm like, okay, I'm going to lose my cool in a minute, that letting go breath, and I can picture that toxin negativity just kind of leaving my body. So I love that too, because it can be very complicated, but it can also be very simple.
Yeah. Yes.
And it comes back to us listening to ourselves, how is my body feeling after I have that letting go breath or whatever. So like a bit of a digression, but
no, that's exactly it. That's exactly what we've been talking about, which is, so I let the breath go, and in myself, I'm just like, oh, I just feel a bit of peace. And now I feel capable to do the next thing. And whatever that thing is. And if I can pair the breath with the thing, if I can pair those things together, it's empowering, I guess. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then again, it's that spiral, I think. It's that mini spiral. It's those tiny habits, how they spiral together. It's like, I take a breath. Do I want to get on the bike now? Okay, I'll do it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or do I want to mark 5 more essays? Okay, I'll do it for 5 minutes. Just where I'm at right now. You know, so it just allows the space. Like all of the negative self-talk and all of the shoulding and all of the, I got to do this and do that, it occupies space. It occupies space that we just like strip it out, that we would have the space, the energy to do the things that we're saying that we want to do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that was awesome. I think, I've written myself some notes here of things that really resonate with me. And one of the things I didn't write down, but I was thinking a lot of, and I can really see you doing this with yourself, Heather, is, you know, calling BS on yourself when it's BS. And I don't know how many of us, like, if you're watching this podcast, maybe you're thinking, like, what do you mean by that? But I think a lot of us, we see those excuses as real barriers. And then, but are they real barriers or are they perceived barriers? And I think making the kind of having awareness of the difference, you know, if it's a blizzard outside and the gym is closed, you can't go to the gym, like that's a real barrier. But how many times do we have these, oh, I'm just too busy, I can't possibly. I'm like, again, if you don't have 10 minutes, then what are you doing? Something's not working. No, that was awesome.
Yeah. So, and it's all of those things. It's if weather is a barrier, then how do you get around weather? The more proactive, it's like having the tool without needing it versus needing the tool and not having it, right? The more we can do the proactive work. And part of that is the work of a coach, is just to expose those things. It's like, with my other clients, here are some of the things. Like, sometimes I ask a client, so what's going to get in the way? They're like, oh, nothing. I'm 100%. I'm doing this. I'm like, I love it. I love it. Let's just name a couple things just in case. Like, you know, because I would rather you have the tools. not that I want to bring you down, but here are some other barriers that my clients have talked about. Weather. Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Okay. So, or so what can you do? I mean, the power of the internet is beautiful, right? Because I seriously can't tell you how many 10-minute grapevines I've done in my kitchen, because I'm just like, hey, I can't go out. And I literally, this is what I tell myself: go on Google 10-minute aerobics, whatever is first, you're doing it. Like, as long as it doesn't have any equipment, like, you're doing it. And so my partner will be like, oh, you got another one, eh? And as I'm in there doing it, in my kitchen. So whatever, there's ways to get around those barriers, obviously, but sometimes you don't want to. Sometimes you don't want to, right? And in those moments, I think it's okay to say, you know what, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that workout. I'm not feeling it. Where I go inside of myself, because I'm like, okay, well, if I have a burning need, like if I've had a really stressful day and my body is activated and, all the stress hormones are there and I feel them and I just don't want to do that workout. Okay, but what are you going to do instead? Because if you don't do anything, that's going to sit there. And Gabor Mate, I don't know, you would know him probably yet. So Jamie is like, he wrote this book called When the Body Says No. So if you don't listen to your body will find a way for you to listen to it, right? It'll find a way, and it will come out in all kinds of interesting ways. And we're seeing all of those things involved, in people. And they're often autoimmune stuff because it's connected. And that's what you said in the mind-body thing. Heather was talking about that. Psychoneuroendoimmunology, that's what that is, right? And so, okay, you don't want to work out, but it's quality to ask yourself, okay, well then, what do I need to decompress this? That's an effective behavior. And I heard Amy say that. Effective as opposed to less effective, They all work, but what's going to help me get what I want now and in the future, hopefully.
Right.
But with COVID, we're very much living in the now, I feel like, because we're just trying to get through each day. And that's okay. That's okay, because we're in survival mode. If we can, some days do something that we need now and for future, amazing. If not, and we're living in the now, okay. Okay.
I'm going to share one more thing, and I know we need to wrap up shortly, but when you were talking about your body will find a way to, to make you listen to it, this is, oh my gosh, probably about 10 years ago, going to the gym, and one of the instructors had pulled a hamstring, and she was teaching step. Okay, well, I think I'm just going to use 2 risers, or I'm going to use 1 riser today instead of 2. Okay, no, now I'm feeling better, back to 2 risers. Oh, now I'm just going to put my step on the ground because my hamstring's still bothering me. Yeah. Just didn't give it time to heal. And then what happened? She got laryngitis. Well, you can't teach with laryngitis. So her body found a way to physically shut her down and say, okay, you're not going to take care of this hamstring. Let me take care of it for you. Now you can't speak, so you can't teach. So off you go.
Yes, exactly.
A real life example of, and I think about that often when I feel like I'm not listening to my body. I think back to that instructor in that time, because I firmly believe, that's what happened to her.
Me too. And Jamie, I'm sure you have tons of stories like neck pain, back pain, head aching. There is some research that talks about adult onset asthma, like a broad spectrum of ailments that can be circled back to that sort of cycle. Again, the body, the embodiment conference was on not too long ago, and somebody said the body is a source of knowledge. And I was just like, yes, your body is a source of knowledge. Like, listen to it. It's like another friend who's been nagging at you this whole time. And you're like, yeah. Well, if you're not going to listen, I'm not going to find a way. I'll give you another example. With my children who are fighting, one is telling the other one, I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to do that. And I'll say to this one, I'll be like, okay, they're using their words. If you're not going to use their words, what do you think they're going to try next? Right? You're going to get a punch in the face, kid. Like, I'm just telling you, like, if you're not going to listen, they're going to find a way for you to listen. So, I mean, and that's kind of a beautiful thing about bodies. I mean, there's so many, our bodies are fascinating, but there's so many beautiful things. It's not to shame anyone who might have that experience. It's just like, oh, there it is again. There it is again. Our culture, our society, connecting me from that. Okay, how can I learn from this? Like, this isn't a shaming point. This is just like good knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think of like tense moments when, like, you can think of those like very literally, but also very figuratively. If you are in an argument with someone, you could consider that to be a tense moment, but it's not just like the energy in the air and in what you're saying. Like, you might have like clenched fists, you might have a shrugged shoulders, like your body physically, there are those physical manifestations. And, if you're unable to like debrief or calm down after that, you're carrying that tension in your body with you afterwards too, right? And so, yeah, the body is definitely a storage and like a vessel almost for all these energies and emotions. And it's, if it goes kind of left unchecked and unexplored and unacknowledged, yeah, things can build up and manifest in perhaps, you know, adult onset asthma, or, you know, just little aches and pains and small little injuries, just like, you know, as the body saying, hey, you need to, like, there's stuff in me, there's stuff under the surface that you need to listen to and address. Absolutely.
Yeah. And like psoriasis or different skin things, like it's fascinating. Like when those evolve, it's, I mean, it could be completely something clinical. It could be, who knows, like exposure to new substance or something, but it's not a bad idea to keep that in your mind. Okay, like how's my life been going, and have I been able to manage stress, or, you know, what do I want in life, and am I getting it, and how much am I struggling, and all those things. And then, because we're talking about fitness and physical activity, how can I use physical activity or fitness and physical activity to sort of mitigate some of those things? And I love it. Like, it's so interesting. Like I've said this, like hashtag frontline mental health workers, like fitness people are frontline mental health workers, because this is how connected our body is. And to say, oh, sets and reps, like that's not the whole thing. Like, I hope we can, all of us, like all of our us together, can, the future hopefully has us working together more collaboratively. We're seeing that a bit, but I hope we're making space for those things to cross over a little bit more, because I think they're so intertwined. And I think by not making it really obvious, or not having those conversations about how they're intertwined, is that there's a lot of shame coming out of people, because they're like, oh, I should do this, I should do that, but without having the whole picture realization. So yeah, anyway, that would be my biggest take.
Well, happy to chat again in the new year in 2021. We'll maybe come up with a different take on this topic, or if you know myself or Heather or Jamie and you have an idea for a podcast topic that's kind of related to this, then let us know how we can help you out. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much, Heather, for joining us. It was awesome. The hour flew by. Holy moly.
I know. I feel like I have so much more to say, but yes, let's have more conversation.
I know. It's a continual conversation, so it won't be the last one. We'll reach out again, Heather. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you both for your time, and yeah, I look forward to continued conversations. Amazing.
Yeah, pleasure connecting with you, Heather, and stay fit and stay well, everybody.
Yeah, there you go.